Hello and welcome to our podcast. This is Steven with KSU FSA, and today I am going to be talking to you guys about mental health. So, I first wanted to start off by just doing a general trigger warning. I will be talking about some more serious issues and things that people have gone through, me specifically, and just want to make sure that anyone listening is prepared if things get a little bit too intense. But starting off, I wanted to introduce just kind of the concept of mental health. It's kind of more of an accepted thing nowadays in society, but it is always a difficult thing to talk about in regards to any situation. So it's definitely something that's really important, and I'm glad that I get to talk to you guys about it. So, one of the things that I wanted to bring up first was just that overall acceptance of mental health. It's really important that when it comes to owning up to your mental health or understanding what is going on, how you feel, and why you feel, is that you have to accept that those feelings are real. You have to accept that that position that you're in life, mentally and physically, is there and that you have to address it. It's something where no matter how much denial you can have over time, that's still going to loom over you. And I can't stress enough just the importance of kind of taking that first step into understanding just what it is, what it means to you, and kind of learning a little bit about yourself in the process. I feel like it's really important, especially when understanding from a more Asian perspective. For instance, mental health is not a very well discussed or well approved subject when it comes to a lot of common Asian families. I am lucky where my family is a lot more welcoming to mental health issues. We all have them. It's very hereditary to an extent. But in a lot of families, I know that one of the biggest problems you can run into is that when you have these mental health issues, it's hard to open up about them when you have a family where they misinterpret your problems. They can take it in ways where they feel like maybe you're being lazy or you're just being disrespectful because of your outburst, or just different ways where, like, in a way you can understand where they're coming from, but they're just not being as open to understanding your point of view as they need to be. And that's just on, a little bit of toxic Asian culture. And there's not much you can do about fixing that specifically. That's something that they'll have to just kind of learn to understand themselves over time. But there's things that you can do for yourself specifically. And like I said, one of those to start off with is understanding what's going on. There's a lot of kind of fear and denial that comes, especially from families or from that understanding of mental health through your family. For instance, if you had your family and they didn't believe in a lot of mental health issues, they thought you were just being lazy, thought you were just being this way or that, then that's still going to rub off on you, especially growing up. We're very impressionable. So, things like that can really make a mark and change your way of thinking to the point where growing up, you can have these very difficult, depressive moments, struggle with like all kinds of anxiety or different issues, and just blow them off as I'm being lazy, I need to do more, or they just don't understand. Like, you have your own little outlets. Maybe you go out and try and get your mind off of things, and there starts a different addiction or a different coping mechanism that you use in order to deal with it, because the one family that you're supposed to have to address it with you isn't treating it with the same amount of importance that you need. And that's why you have to kind of create your own, I don't want to say family, but like your own support in order to truly realize and help yourself when it comes to mental health. Not everyone is always going to be there the way for you that you need. And sometimes it's because they just don't understand. Other times they want to help, but it's just not the kind of help. And as hard as it can be for people like that to understand that and accept it, sometimes, yeah, it kind of takes just the right person in order to help a certain situation. And so you have to kind of just pick and choose on what you can do and how you can do it. Now, going on to kind of the next point, or just talking about the next thing, is just kind of getting a better understanding of what you're going through. So now you kind of can know when you're having some sort of mental health issues, but definitely it's kind of just working your way through it mentally on kind of what's going on and what you feel, how you feel, why you feel. And so I feel like those are all very important kind of steps as well. Just to speak from a little bit of personal experience, like I've said, I've struggled with depression for a while now, since I was 13. And so I've actually been diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder. And that's because I've had such severe untreated depression for so long, it's just kind of permanently affected my brain. And so you can think of it in that kind of, scientific way where it's just like, okay, my brain's all messed up, so use medicine and I'll fix it. And in some cases, that's as simple as it is, something that you can't really help. But in other instances, you have to be able to kind of know maybe like what triggers or what's actually going on around you that makes you feel a certain way. And sometimes it's a mix of both. And so being able to address what you can without medicine is always beneficial. I've gone through a lot of problems in my life where kind of self-worth was always something that I personally struggled with. It was kind of to the point where when I was really depressed, I had this mentality where I basically accepted that one day I would kill myself. And so it made it really hard to be productive, be motivated, because it kind of felt like there was an end, and I knew there's an end, but it was going to be coming so soon that anything that I did would be pointless. And stuff like that can just be really detrimental to your progress in life and trying to see a better light in the kind of struggles that you're in. And so that's something that I've personally struggled with for a while. I got into this bad habit where I kind of chose to live for other people. And that was because, when you talk about certain things, a lot of what you'd hear is, oh, but if you die, that'll make me sad. And I can't live without you, stuff like that. And the sentiment can be very helpful. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just, for me personally, I know one of my problems with interpretation was that I will live because I want them to be happy. But it kind of just disregards any growth or happiness that I would actually preferably want. And so, on top of just that overall feeling that I might just kill myself eventually, I kind of had this idea where since I'm living for other people and not so much myself, I kind of grew onto this emptiness where when you're only living for other people, and you kind of lose those groups, or say friends leave, it makes it really easy for you to fall down into that kind of depressive pit. And, that's something that's just really hard. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, to have to kind of mentally pick yourself back up when you've fallen so low. But it's it's something that I went through, and I understand, maybe not the same situation, but many others have gone through tough times and different mental health issues. And so it's just really important that you can feel open enough, feel comfortable enough to look inside yourself, accept what you had to go through or what you are going through, and then just understand why and what's going on. I know I've always been interested in mental health, and I've always tried to be that one friend that could be there for others when they have problems with their health as well, because I feel like it's important to kind of be there for them in the same. So if you can't just expect someone to constantly be there without having to kind of give off some helpful energy as well, because otherwise it's just very one-sided. And I don't know, I just feel like there's not too much fairness to that. But I have plenty of other friends, not to name names, but I know some who have different issues. Some strain from family ties, where a lot of their family members just kind of don't accept them. They've been just pretty cold, and can be really detrimental to their own health because they're so stuck in their old ways. And like I said, that's a big problem that you'll see a lot with Asian families or communities. But yeah, so a lot of that is something that you'll see a lot. And it's the way it kind of affects you is, when you think about it, that family is supposed to be your kind of baseline support group, or family in general is supposed to be like your base support. And that's because they're always around you. They see you usually the most, depending on how you are. They've raised you, so it kind of has this underlying expectation where they are supposed to be for you when no one else is, because the whole saying, blood is thicker than water. And so when you have this disconnect with your own family, a lot of times that can really hurt you mentally, and just like the way you approach life, because it's hard to kind of find trust in others when the one family group that you are supposed to trust at all times isn't there for you like the way you need them to. And that's just like one situation, but it's just important to kind of note that, as important as family is, especially in Asian culture, family is a very strong component. I know in Filipino culture specifically, like familia is one of the most important things to anyone. But I feel like, especially through KSU FSA, we try to promote this idea that you have familia everywhere, you have family everywhere, you have support everywhere. And so you just have to kind of open yourself up to kind of create your own family, so that even in situations like that, where your birth family or the family that you are living with don't accept you or help you the way you need, then you have to just kind of create your own, or find your own, until they can kind of change themselves to adapt with who you are. Because you you are perfect, you have your issues, but there's nothing you have to change. They have to change themselves so that they can understand and help you and be there for you like you need them to. So I just wanted to talk about that. Um, some other issues that I've seen common are more toward anxiety. Um, Depression and anxiety do kind of go a lot hand in hand, so it's easy to kind of talk about them together. Um, Definitely in college, there's a lot of anxiety, and especially now with COVID and quarantine, anxieties have been at an all time high for many people. And so it's important to talk about that a little bit and see how just kind of everyone's approach to it is going. Um, Anxiety is just like a very persistent problem that people have. Some have it worse than others, where it can just be anxiety over a test coming up, anxiety because of homework, anxiety because of this and that. Others can be a little bit more situational, like, say, a lot of my school anxiety comes from, paying for college out of pocket, just taking longer on classes or struggling with things comparatively to other students, or just kind of not feeling like I'm able to give my best because motivational issues. And so stuff like that is pretty common for college students to have anxiety. Um, Everyone has their own methods at coping or addressing that anxiety. And I don't want to feel like I'm like telling you that this method works or that this one is how you do it. But I do want to give at least some suggestions because everyone has anxiety, and I've learned some ways over time on things to approach it with. Um, I definitely should probably approach anxiety as I preach it, but it's easier to just kind of look from the outside and say what's wrong and what you can do versus being the one actually doing it. And so, definitely with all of this stuff, I'm working on it myself. But if I can help others kind of find their way, then I'll be glad to. But yeah, anxiety is a very difficult thing because it just depends on how you perceive yourself and how your thoughts kind of express themselves to you in your head. And so some can be a lot more intrusive where you just kind of tell yourself, like, hey, I'm doing this wrong. Hey, I need to do this better. I need to do this faster, blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of like needs or misgivings on how you're not meeting the par or like the level that you mentally want it to be at. And so there can be a lot of anxiety that stems from situations like that. And so it's important to kind of just look back and see what you're capable of and what you've actually accomplished. Kind of just judge yourself where, yes, you could have done better, but you did something. It sounds really dumb and just that optimistic viewpoint, but sometimes a little dumb optimism can do a lot for your mood and your overall mental state. So, if you got out of bed, give yourself a whole high five. Just like, really splurge, have a cookie, go back to bed if anything. Just like, the just kind of giving yourself little wins every now and then can be a good help when it comes to anxiety. Another kind of thing that a lot of anxiety will kind of upbring is just worries, or not so much things that you could be doing better, but more like things that could go wrong, or just general fears that can stem from stuff like that. I have a lot of personal social anxiety, and so things that I worry about or stress about stem from just kind of how others perceive of me, um, how I can hurt someone or say the wrong things and affect someone else. It's just kind of like a personal, I don't want to be a bad person. And the thought of doing stuff that's wrong always terrifies me and gives me anxiety. But I know for others it can be a lot more different. Like I said, with COVID, a common anxiety that you'll see nowadays is just approaching any of that. The 2020's been definitely a very anxious year, whether it be um, thinking about the presidency, having this whole presidential election going on recently, very anxiety inducing, trying to work our way through that. Seeing a lot of the protest or being a part of the protest, focusing on how Black Lives Matter and trying to kind of fight or support those that you want, and just the overall empathetic anxiety that you can get from either experiencing that kind of discrimination or wanting to be there for those who have. That kind of exists a lot this year. And then, of course, the anxiety of catching COVID, contracting or spreading COVID, because as scary as it is, you don't want to give others any issues as well. And so not only are you scared of catching it, but to give it to more people and then also make them go through what you're going through can be very rough. And, there's different ways of approaching anxieties like that. 2020 has gave us numerous coping mechanisms, whether you've become an avid gamer, if you just started watching Netflix shows back to back, if you've just delved into working, so now you're working all the time, so that can distract you. Different things, some healthy, some little less. But just to approach some of them, like with COVID, it's just about being as responsible and helpful of a person as you can be. Take test if you want to do anything with groups, wear your mask, social distance when you can. Try not to be in too large a group environment if you can help it. Just general things, small things that you can do. And as long as you try your best to keep yourself and others safe, then you tried your best. There's always going to be that general fear, but you just can't let that fear drive you when you've already done all that you can. In presidency, you have your vote, the election's already passed, so a lot of that is kind of more in hindsight and just kind of fear for the future. And regardless of who you voted for, it is important to just kind of understand that, you have a voice too, and regardless of who is the president, who is in the government, like, you just kind of have to continue to push your voice out there and let yourself be heard, because otherwise you do have to succumb to that kind of pressure, that anxiety. You have to let yourself be bigger and be more out there, and just be a part of movements, be a part of the change that you want to see in the world. It's hard, social anxiety wise, to kind of get out of the house and say go to a protest or sign petitions, do stuff where you actually are enacting real change. But sometimes, like, just working off of impulse, knowing what's right and then just acting on it without second thought, it's really relieving to kind of do, and makes you feel more feel less that you aren't doing enough, because you've put a little bit more effort, especially more than you're comfortable doing. And so once again, it's kind of bringing it back to that idea of just kind of having little wins. You have to kind of take what you can get sometimes when it comes to mental health, because nothing can really be perfect off the bat. You have to just kind of work with whatever little bits of goodness you can get. And so one of the last things I wanted to talk about was what you can do. I've talked about a couple things for different situations on you can do this, you can do that, you can play games, or just hang out with friends, watch Netflix, yada yada. But definitely one of the best things I can recommend, and one of the most important things that you can do mental health wise to support yourself, is seek counseling or psychiatric help. It's a very intimidating venture, I suppose, where I know a lot of people are scared of doing it or hesitant to kind of get into that because of stories that you might hear. And I can't speak for every psychiatrist or counselor, but it is important to find one that you like and are able to open up to. Everyone, kind of approaches their own mental health in different ways, and so there's plenty of different professionals out there who specialize in approaches toward whatever works best for you. Like, I work well personally with very empathetic people. I'm very empathetic, and so it helps for me when I'm opening up to them that I can see that they're feeling and they understand, because otherwise it's like talking to a brick wall. And so just kind of trying to find what's comfortable is a very important part of psychiatric help, but definitely these people are professionals, and as much as I can give you advice or tell you about my experiences, they're the ones that have done the studying to actually give you the help you deserve and you need. If you go to KSU, we do have a counseling and psychological services. I would very much so recommend you go check them out if you ever needed help. I personally see a counselor and a psychiatrist there, and it has done a world of difference. It counts underneath your tuition, so you don't have to worry about insurance too much or extra payments. And they can prescribe you medicine, and as long as you have like good RX or good insurance, then you should be able to get that medicine for fairly cheap too. But like I said in the beginning, like sometimes it's just a chemical issue, and as much as talking or going about all these different methods can do it, sometimes you just need a little bit more serotonin in your life to kind of balance you out, or maybe a little less. But if it comes down to that, definitely please check out any psychiatric care or help. But beside doing that, there are things that you can do on your own. One of which I kind of touched on earlier was that you want to create your own family, your own support base. It's really important that you have a set amount of people that you can kind of trust with your problems, trust with how you truly feel, because it always gives you an outlet where you're safe. And safety is just really important. You gotta be able to be comfortable around those and have people with you that you can just really trust and love. I have plenty of friends, or I've slowly grown to have friends like that, and I love them with all my heart. It's really a big difference when you have yourself to kind of just overthink and work yourself through situations, when you just overexert yourself or think wrong of situations, think of the worst, the pessimism kind of draws in. Sometimes you need that external kind of viewpoint and those helpful voices to kind of just make you feel worth it, make your anxieties flutter away, distract you. And distractions are good too. You don't have to pay attention to your mental health all the time. You don't have to be so self-aware that you are constantly thinking and talking about your depression, anxiety, whatnot. So, if you ever need to, go ahead and just lose control. Just get distracted and have fun. Forget about any of your problems for a day. And sometimes that can be very invigorating. But definitely now the last thing that I'd recommend is, as painful as it can be, it is important to take time for yourself to like go out and do something on your own you'd usually do with people. Do something daring. Maybe just give some time to yourself to think, talk, listen to music, or just be introspective. That's something I've been working a lot on lately, but it's definitely a very important step toward the right direction. And as hard as it can be, it can make a big difference. Kind of just, you want to have help from other people, and most of the time you need help from other people, but you also have to kind of grow to the point where you can fix things or help yourself to an extent. Like the friends and the counseling and the psychiatry helps you kind of get that step up, but you have to be willing to take the next step on your own. And so you kind of just have to build up that motivation to want to do better, to want to be better. And that's what you have friends and family and, counselors for. They help you get that motivation. They help build you up. And, we're not trying to be just like where we are. We always want to grow as people, as human beings. And so it's really important that you want to find yourself and understand that you deserve better. You deserve to be better. And that everyone is here for you and you can really build yourself up. But yeah, that's all I had to say for now. Thank you guys for listening. Next week we will have another podcast, and I hope you guys are excited to hear about them. I'm not gonna spoil anything, so you guys can just kind of get a fresh look at what they talk about. But it was nice talking to everyone, and I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast.